trend.
Oh. Back in October, Galaxy Investment Partners CEO and hedge fund legend Mike Novogratz called for Bitcoin to rally to $10,000. Here's what he said.
It would not surprise me if in the next 6 to 10 months we're over 10,000.
Well, at the rate Bitcoin's going, we won't need a couple of months. The cryptocurrency has almost doubled since that call, sitting at less than $500 away from that $10,000 mark. We will probably hit 10,000 in the next 5 minutes or so. Question now, how much higher could Bitcoin go? What is fueling this rally? We have brought Mike Novogratz back to answer those burning questions for us. Mike, it's always great to see you. Thanks for
Good to see you.
What's your next call?
My next call. Put me on the spot. Listen, I mean, to start with, trees don't grow to the sky, and the pace of this move has been really fast. And so on one hand, lots of the speculative sensors are out. The amount of retail customers coming in, the amount of phone calls I get, that gets me a little bit nervous that we could have a short-term top. On the other hand, when I step back, I'm like, wait a minute. The whole market cap of all the crypto is $300 billion. That's nothing. The NASDAQ at its height in the 1999 bubble was $6 trillion. And the NASDAQ was a U.S.-led bubble. This is a global phenomenon. 60-70% of all trading volume in these cryptos are happening in Japan and Korea. And so I have a sense that this is going to go a lot further. When I try to think of valuation, Bitcoin really has taken the use case of digital gold. Gold's $8 trillion or $7.5 trillion. And so at 150 billion Bitcoin, 30 times, 40 times, 50 times higher than here, then you're starting to look like Bitcoin's replaced gold. Or at least it's on parity of gold. And so my short-term call, I guess, is things have gone pretty far, and maybe you'll backfill a little bit. But over the medium term, this thing is going to go a lot higher. I said recently I thought total market cap by the end of next year would be $1 trillion. That's probably a little light, but if it's $1 trillion to $2 trillion, that's kind of 6x from where we are now, and it's not all going to go into Bitcoin.
60,000 from where we are?
Sorry, 6 times.
Oh, 6 times, okay.
6 times 200.
Okay. Oh, okay.
300 billion.
6 times 300 billion gets you a $2 trillion market cap by the end of 2018. And, there's Ethereum, there's Bitcoin Cash, there's EOS, there's all kinds of protocols.
So what are the assumptions? I mean, you made the parallel to the NASDAQ during the bubble days and the total market cap of the NASDAQ back then. What is the assumption on how high Bitcoin could go? Is there an assumption in your head?
Well, I look at gold.
Is it all of the market cap of gold right now?
Why not in some ways? And so each of these tokens represent individual ecosystems, right? There's one for cloud computing. There's one for file sharing. There's one for online gambling. Bitcoin is the ecosystem of digital money or digital store of wealth. And it's really more digital store wealth or digital gold. And so if gold's $8 trillion, I don't understand why Bitcoin can't get there.
So, Mike, everybody asks me, what derails this? What keeps you up at night, right? We know the bull case, it's working, but you wake up one day and this one thing happens. What is it that scares you?
Well, I'd hate for myself to get hacked because that would really suck. But a really major exchange being hacked in a major way. We've had plenty of small hacks, and small in comparison to market cap, but a major hack or a real change of mindset on the regulators. Right now, most regulators have been working with the system. We work a lot ourselves with the regulators. If for some reason they woke up and did an about face, that would be no good.
So, Mike, you mentioned that you're kind of getting a little nervous about this speculative fervor. I've heard you on a few occasions talk about you started buying Ethereum in the single digits, right?
Yes.
And so now it's just below 500. So how do you get, all these people are opening up these hundreds of thousands of Coinbase accounts just in the last couple of weeks. How do you go out and talk to these people about what the opportunity is? For you, you knew that you could lose a few dollars when you paid a few dollars for Ethereum. Now it's almost $500. And it's really hard to talk about the long-term vision to 2 trillion and all of these. You know what I mean? So
what I tell people, the retail type customer, I said, put 1 to 3% of your net worth in it. Because if it goes down 50%, it's like buying 1 to 3% of Google and it goes down 50%. For wealthier people who can afford a little bigger loss, yeah, take it to 5% or even 10%. But I don't recommend anybody throw their entire net worth into this.
What is your net worth in terms of how much is tied up in
I'm probably over 20% at this point. And because it keeps going up and I take some off and then I get, well, why am I taking it off and I buy more? And maybe it's even 30%.
What do you think about futures? The CME is going to launch its futures for Bitcoin. December 10th is the date right now. What does that do to Bitcoin, if anything? Does it suppress volatility? Does it cause more volatility?
I think in the short run, the future will not be as exciting as people are hoping it will, because it's going to take a while for it to build liquidity. The really promising part of the future, though, is when you have a future, you'll need a stock borrow. And all of a sudden you'll have a lending market in Bitcoin. And as soon as you have a lending market in Bitcoin, guess what? Then you have an interest rate curve in Bitcoin. And all of a sudden, Bitcoin starts looking more like a currency than it ever did. It's very difficult right now. There's not an efficient market to buy it, to borrow or lend against all of these coins. And I think the future market will really accelerate that.
Is there a trading opportunity surrounding the launch and the early days of Bitcoin futures?
I think this march of institutionalization of the whole crypto space is just a positive. And so the fact that the CME is credentializing this is a huge win. And I think that's part of what's driven the price up here. I think once it gets going and starts building liquidity, just more access to the market.
Mike, you mentioned that Bitcoin with the yield curve could look more like a currency. So what, if anything, does the future of Bitcoin mean to currencies, the U.S. dollar, global currencies?
In the short run, nothing. Why? Because currencies need real stability, right? I've said this before, the dollar versus the yen, which I focused on very closely for 25 years of my life, quite frankly, never moves more than plus or minus 6% in a year, maybe 10%. My wife once said, are you going to spend your whole career looking at that little squiggly line? Bitcoin is moving too fast with too much volatility to ever really be a currency, right? This water can't cost $1 one day and $6 a month later. And so until there's real stability in price, it won't be used as a
Bears
currency.
will say that that's the exact reason why Bitcoin isn't any kind of currency, that it's its own
gold,
thing.
when's the last time you bought a pair of shoes in gold? Right? Never. Or even a pair of shoes in a quarter of a Google share. Never.
The argument is also that you can't speculate in currencies, when in fact I think people are speculating in currencies all the time. The ranges are then levered up, but they're smaller ranges, but they are. But you talk about the risks here, and you talk about you getting hacked. How do you protect a digital wallet in this day and age? And what are people doing to because the amount of wealth that they have stored here is almost, this is the part that's difficult for me. Not difficult for me to see why it's going higher and why people want to own it. How do you protect yourself?
So, when it was a small amount of money, you didn't worry about it so much. It becomes a big amount of money, you start worrying about it a lot. The exchanges, the custody places, and places like us who both self-custody and use custody places, you take your keys off the internet. And so it's called cold storage. You actually put your private keys on a computer in a safe, and you put that safe in a really safe place. That's safe. The percentage of your coins that you want to leave active to be able to trade back and forth, those have more risk on it. Now, let's say you put some on Coinbase and some on Gemini and some on the various exchanges. Each of those places is doing the same thing. They're keeping 90% of their coins offline. And so if I put 10% of my coins online in 10 different places, 1% in each, and they're doing that, all of a sudden have very, very little, at risk to a hack. And so that's why this is a lot safer than it feels, as long as you're using prudent risk management.
I'm going to go back to the first question that I asked you in this interview, and that is your forecast for Bitcoin. Give me a level for 2018. Where do you see Bitcoin going? You're very decisive in your interview last month, and you're very, you were spot on.
Listen, Bitcoin could be at 40,000 at the end of the 2018. It really easily could. And I think Ethereum, which I think will just touched 500 or is getting close, could be triple where it is as well. There's a big wave of money coming, not just here, but all around the world. And, as we push more people into the system,